What paranormal or supernatural experiences have you had that caused you to question reality? As my son learned to talk, he would tell me in his own babyish way how the world would end and how people we knew would die, and he would talk about the people that he saw, that no one else could see, and how they died. It was a very hard few years before he grew out of it. He would often have bright red welted handprints on his back or stomach much bigger than he or I's hands, and he would never sleep in a bed for fear of a guy called Simon that would watch him. The older he gets, the more he grows out of it, and we haven't lived this life for years. I'm glad. It was a terrible nightmare for years. I'm so relieved he got space away from it. Don't know if this counts, but I thought of this immediately. I couldn't fall asleep one night and it was like 2 in the morning. I decided to pick up my phone, and my eyes wouldn't focus right, and then I put in my headphones, played some chill music with a good beat, and tripped for like an hour. No drugs or anything. Woke up the next day tired and all sorts of fucked up. Still don't know what happened. Alien abduction. 21-year-old male here living in New Zealand. I'm not one that buys into conspiracy theories or creepypastas etc. Never have been either, but I felt that shit during my years at high school. Encounters of the fifth kind haunted me for years. Messed me up mentally. Got depressed, retracted into myself because I was so scared of the world and everything in it. I was scared of my own mind cause I started hallucinating and having anxiety attacks. Call me crazy or whatever you want. But I know what I saw and felt. 6 years later, life is better for me now. Haven't had any experiences in a very long time now. What to think of it all. The more I let my mind rest on it, the more it consumed me. It's a Pandora's box. I had to close that shit, lock it up, throw the key away, and blow the fucking box up. Never looked back ever since. Fuck that. I was home with my brother, my sister and my dad has just left, and all the lights were off, and we were just sitting there chilling for whatever reason. All of a sudden I hear our Super Nintendo playing what it sounds like to be Mario. We both looked at each other and had heard the exact same thing. We went into the room with the Nintendo and nothing was on. No lights, no TV, no Nintendo. But as soon as we started making noise, the sound went away. But we both clearly heard it at the exact same time. I see ghosts all the time while walking my dog. It's usually people dressed like they're from the 50s who suddenly appear and then vanish. Does it scare you or are you merely observing? I just went through your whole post history, and nothing indicated that you can see ghosts so casually as you described it. In fact, you are a pretty normal guy that is a WWE fan. But why would people in the internet lie? So I think Hess telling the truth. Per second, what does him being a WWE fan have to do with anything? I hear shuffling noises in my room at night. I tell myself that it's an animal outside, but it doesn't really sound like one. I hope it's an animal. My dad came home from work one night scared shitless because he saw this massive wolf-like beast with red eyes walking around on its hind legs in our backyard. My friend and I were walking down the street from our neighbors one day, in broad daylight, and suddenly a baseball hits me in the side. I start crying. We are looking around, can't see anyone. The baseball is lying on the ground next to me. We continue walking. We both instinctually turn around and watch as the ball lifted vertically in the air, then tossed to the other side of the street to another neighbor's yard. We ran like hell, and no one believed us. But who would? We were 10 and 11, but to this day it's mind-boggling. A lot of other paranormal stuff has happened in that neighborhood, but it's too much to go into. One time when my friend and I were like 8 to 9, we were in the backyard at my grandma's house after dark. We looked down the street, and under the streetlight at the end of the street, we saw a cat. We pointed out the cat and watched it. It started walking in our direction, and we realized it was bigger than a cat, so we said, "Oh, no, it's a dog." As it walked farther in our direction, we saw it turn into what we called an Eastern time-shaped thing. We screamed and ran into the house and got my brother to come look, but it was gone. It could have been a dog, and the light shadows maybe made it appear to grow in size shape. But we both remember it to this day, in our mid-20s, and still don't know what we saw for sure. Okay, so when I sleep sometimes I will dream about something random and weird and very specific, and maybe a month, a day, a week or however long later I will experience that thing, and my reaction is like Lynx when he recovers a new memory in BOTW. My mom told me about the Truman Show when I was little. Still never seen the movie, but she told me he found a hole in the sky, and then he found out everyone in his world, including his family, was an actor, and other people were watching every moment of his life. Every once in a while I wonder a little bit how anyone could know that wasn't happening to them, and any mentium of that movie or anything like it was just a hint that far smarter people knew you wouldn't pick up on. Some friends and I were hanging at the graveyard. Yeah, we used to do this kind of stuff when we all, 8 ppl at the occasion, saw a large white dog passing by, like a Canadian shepherd, but too bright to be just lit by moonlight. Another dude, a girl and I went close to better see it, but it was just gone. It was a straight lane between the graves, and we heard no sound of jumping or the like, the dog just vanished. So I've always been kinda open to paranormal things but never experienced anything, but my wife is complete opposite. She's not down with anything remotely spooky. So one night I wake up and one side of my room is almost completely black, but the other side is fine. I chalk it up to my eyes not adjusting, but after waking back up feeling like someone was watching me, I see multiple shadow figures right off to the side of my bed. Again thinking I'm tripping, I try to roll over on my stomach face down, and jokingly think to myself nothing is there. Something breathes in my left ear, my wife is to my right. I think to myself if you're actually there do it 3 more times, sure the fuck enough I hear it breathe in my ear 3 more times. I about shit myself and hid under the covers like a 5-year-old. The next morning I tell my wife and she tells me she saw the same thing, worst case. She now believes that spooky shit can happen to anyone. We lived in this house in a middle-class neighborhood that used to be an old cotton field. I was told that the owner had committed suicide after the death of his wife and his grandchildren sold the property to the city to build the neighborhood. If you live there long enough, you'll start seeing some odd stuff. Like towels floating up from the counter only to fall right next to the floor, thinking that you've seen someone in the house with you only to find nothing there, hearing the silent cries of an old man, etc. I've lived in that house for 16 years, most of my childhood, and I've always saw really odd things. My dad even told me that when I was little I would talk to some imaginary friend I had until one day I stopped. He noticed and asked why. I told him that my friend found his wife and moved back to his cotton farm. I didn't know those previous facts at the time, so I scared him almost to death. I thought we were crazy until we asked neighbors that have lived in the neighborhood longer than 5 years if they had seen strange things too. Turns out we weren't the only crazy ones. When I was with my first serious boyfriend I would often stay over at his house. The house itself was actually 2 houses that had had the dividing wall knocked down. There was one side of the house, specifically the upstairs hallway and boyfriend's room, that made me feel very unsettled. I'd sometimes have terrible nightmares there and wake up screaming. One time I was dreaming that I was lying on a stone slab in the middle of a cave with lit torches in brackets all around the outside. A hooded figure was leaning over me pinning me down, and I was screaming for help. I heard someone shouting get off her and then woke up. I was completely inconsolable with fear for well over an hour, and had to sit downstairs with hot chocolate to calm down. My boyfriend eventually asked me about the dream, and reluctantly told me his side of events. He said he woke up about 10 seconds before I started to scream and saw something holding me down, and started shouting at it to get off me. That's when I started screaming and woke myself up. I didn't stay in that house again for a long time. When his older brother moved out my boyfriend moved into his room as it was bigger. Never once had a nightmare in that room. When I was around 8 years old I was spending the night with my grandparents. When I would stay over, I would sleep with my grandmother, and my grandfather would sleep in the second bedroom. We laid down and the door was open. She always used to hang a bunch of dresses and purses on a hook on the back of the door, so it was relatively heavy to shut and latch closed. Also in front of the door was one of those square box fans, the really loud ones. We'd been lying there for about 10 minutes, and the door slammed shut, completely latched. Everything fell off the back of the door, and the fan got knocked over. I, as a child of course, started to freak out. She just told me that the dog did it and to go back to sleep, but the dog was already asleep next to her side of the bed the whole time. It still boggles my mind how that happened. But that house was very creepy and a lot of odd things happened there. When I was younger I saw a large bald man in the middle of our neighbor's bean field. I went to get my parents, but he was gone after I got them to look. Then I checked the field. It had just rained, and the field was total mud, but where the bald man was there were no signs of footprints. How didn't he leave any footprints? When I misplaced something and asked my mom where is it, and she said where, but I know I already looked at it thoroughly and said I already tried to look there, but then she said to look again, and when I looked there again, that thing is there in plain sight. Like what? When I was in the military and stationed in Cuba, we were assigned to these houses from the 60s that were once family housing, but were now close to being condemned, and just a place they could house us. I had 4 other roommates, so it wasn't uncommon to walk downstairs and see visitors or friends of my roommates hanging out. One Saturday morning I didn't have work and slept in. All my other roommates were either at work already or still asleep by the time I woke up. I walked downstairs and sitting in a chair in our living room was this guy in his 20s with shaggy blonde hair, a blue Hawaiian shirt and board shorts. Very Sean Penn and Ridgemont High looking. I was taken aback because I thought I was the only person awake home. I said, "Oh crap, I didn't know anyone was over. What's up?" As I was walking into the kitchen, I realized I've never saw this person before, so I grabbed a glass of water and walked into the living room to introduce myself, see which roommate he was hanging out with, only when I got in the living room there was nobody there. I was so freaked out I left the house and went to my friends who lived next door. When I was about 3 or 4, my cousin and I were chilling on my grandma's bed playing on our DSIs when we felt someone sit on the bed. We looked up and no one was there, but there was this dip in the bed like an invisible person was there. We just kinda stayed still for a few minutes, and then it suddenly went away, and the bed went back to normal. Few days later I'm in the bathroom washing my hands after playing with some dirt outside, and I look up in the mirror and see an old dude behind me. Never seen this man in my life. Had this mustache, smiling, and was wearing a red flannel shirt. He was kinda see-through. He disappeared about 5 seconds later. 3-ish years later my dad shows me some old pictures he found of my grandpa that died like 25 to 30 years before I was born, and it was the exact same dude. Haven't been able to look in mirrors since. You should look at our glitch in the Matrix, which you should check out because there are thousands of people that experience very real weird experiences that can't be explained logically. I have many weird experiences myself, but can't be bothered typing them out lol.